How do I decide what I want to put in my toolkit versus what I don't want to have in my toolkit? In this video, I'm going to talk about how I make a decision on the various types of tools that I can use, but in particular, how I make a decision per tool. You're building out your red team toolkit or your entry toolkit, and you are looking particularly, let's say, at physical entry tools right now. How do you decide what one goes and what one stays? I'm going to give you the general idea I use for mine, and then, you can let me know in the comments if you disagree or if you have a different way of deciding what goes in there versus what doesn't go in there. So for this particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be talking about magnet detectors, right? Or field detectors. And this is like if we need to bypass a door contact sensor or something else, what ones of these can I use, right? So I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of each one of these, and then I'll tell you what one I use at the end. You know what? Now I'll just tell you what one I use in the beginning. I use the compass. Now you can think like, why would he use the compass over all these other things? Let's dive a little bit into this, right? So I have a compass. I have what's called a search pole. You can buy these like off of Amazon. And I have a Gauss meter. Sure, I totally mispronounced that. Please let me know if I did in the comments below. But these are all used to detect magnetic fields. So I have a magnet here, right? Now, why would I use one over the other? That just show you that the magnet is real. Well, let's talk about some of the pros and cons. Let's talk about this pro right here. This right here, this meter, excellent meter. Love this meter. Use it in my research in my lab all the time. Great little meter. Didn't cost me $10,000. It's a few hundred. Super accurate. I'm very happy with it. It will tell me the strength relative to field strength as well as north and south. And it does well for what I need it to do. The problem that I have with it is twofold. One, it's very clunky. It is something that is hard to just justify wasting this much space in my bag. It has a requirement as well for batteries, right? That's the second thing I don't like about it, is that it has a requirement for batteries. And some people, batteries work out well for them, right? They can change batteries, they have a schedule and they can do all that. That's not me, right? I know my weaknesses, I know my strengths, and one of my strengths is, being able to be reliable and resourceful with tools. One of my weaknesses is if it requires batteries, I am totally going to forget to charge it up, and I am going to forget to put in new batteries after every engagement or charge it before an engagement. It's just one of my weaknesses. So I tend to move away from things that have batteries. Now, there are some tools that I have that require batteries or required electronics to go through them. And I just have to make do with that. But, this is a great tool, but it requires a lot of space and it requires batteries. Again, that battery thing may not be a problem for you. I know friends of mine, it's not a problem for them at all. The other thing I dislike about this, when I'm breaking into a place that does bag scans, as a lot of places that I do make entry into, they will scan your persons and they'll scan your bag. This is kind of hard to justify why I have it there, right? If I'm going on the pretext that I'm some IT person and this is somehow related to my job, sure, like we can try to explain this away, but that's more effort. And what if I'm not going in under the pretext of IT? Or what if I'm not going in under a pretext where this will fit? Or what if I'm just going into a place where like I don't fit in, right? If I'm making entry into a place, let's say in Asia or in different parts of Central America or something like that, I don't look like what everyone else looks like there. So there is a level of suspicion that is raised with me being there. And now if I have something that's there that I have to explain, it just can cause more problems. Also, getting things like this through customs, not always a big problem. A lot of times we ship similar stuff that we need to ship out there, or we have arrangements with other ways to get things into places that we need them to get to without having to carry them on our person. That is just one thing, an additional thing. Not something you have to worry about with every engagement, but it is something once you start dealing with the higher end engagements where they are doing scans on your body and on your bags and stuff like that. They're going through everything that you do have to worry about. So it doesn't eliminate this for some, but it eliminates it for me. So we'll put off that to the side, right? We'll let it still be in frame so it doesn't feel left out totally. We don't want to hurt its feelings. So now we're down to these two, right? We have the search pole. Search pole is great, right? It's very easy to use. Fun thing about search poles, at least with the search poles that I have, when it points to south, that means that it is south. You don't flip the orientation. So when it points to south, it means it is south. And if it points north, it means it's north, right? So let's see. All right, so this is the south side of that magnet, right? And this would be the north side of the magnet. This is a great tool, right? It allows you to see in 3D space, right? It goes left and right, goes up and down. Works out great. It is a great tool. The problem with it is that it creates, or it has a magnetic field that is strong enough to trip particular mid-level and high-level sensors, right? So what I'm talking about mid and high is UL-rated level 1 and level 2 sensors. This can actually trip those on there. And when we're trying to just detect the magnetic field to determine either a polarization or to find where a magnet and sensor could be, we don't want to trip that sensor while we're using it. So that's why I moved away from the search pole itself, is because it has tripped these sensors before. And in the description, I'll put the UL listing in there so you can read up a little bit. You do have to pay for that document, but you can usually find copies of stuff around for free. But I'll put in the UL listing for door contact sensors and whatnot. But yeah, so this can actually set off the anti-tamper in some of these sensors. And that becomes a problem, right? It works great for lots of other things. Works great when you're trying to find a magnetic anti-tamper on, let's say, a fingerprint reader or something like that. A single read door contact sensor works great in, but there's a problem when we start getting to higher level sensors when we're using this, right? So that is why, the other problem is, though this looks, it doesn't look like a specialized entry tool, it is something that's a little bit different, so it could cause more questioning if they are doing bag scans. Again, not as much of a problem with this, but it is a problem. I have had other red teamers who we're going in together, we're getting our bags scanned. I've had people pull this stuff out and they're like, that's odd, right? So this is part of the reason why I use the compass. Again, with higher security sensors or sensors that are like detecting changes in the magnetic field around it itself, this is not going to set it off, right? You can determine if it's a north or south magnet that you're interfacing with. You can still find sensors through a door, right? We run this through the door, we'll run it by the door frame. We can find like the single point, the single read switch sensor. We can run this around the door, and we can find the door contact sensor with this, right? And then if it has multiple magnets in there, I can find the orientation of those magnets and whatnot. But it works great, again, because it's not going to trip out one of those higher security sensors, but also it's super easy to carry it with you. If you get stopped and someone asks you, why do you have a compass on you, right? You'd be like, oh yeah, I was in the Boy Scouts, or I was in Boys Brigade or Battalion, or whatever you want to say, right? And you can then be like, I was told, always carry a compass, right? You'll never get lost, or make some other dumb, reason why you carry a compass that deals with a personal feeling instead of, anything that's actual technical. Like, it's really easy to explain this away. And a lot of people, when they see a compass in a bag, they're just going to look at it and be like, okay, whatever. And that's one of the reasons why I like the compass. I could put it in a bag. Not a lot of people are going to question it. The other reason is it doesn't set off magnetic fields. And the other reason is it doesn't require batteries, right? So does that mean that the compass is superior to this device right here, our little meter? Absolutely not. The meter is superior. If you want to know lots of information, the meter is going to let you know. But it does have some downfalls, right? Which is why I don't carry the meter. So when I'm trying to define what I want to have on my bag, I have lots of things that I have to consider. Size, weight. Does it require batteries? Can I get it through a bag scanner? If I'm being interrogated, is it something I can more easily explain away? Or do I have to be locked into a particular, story or whatnot? So that's why I like the compass, right? Even better than this, because this can trip out magnetic fields, or this can trip the anti-tamper and different types of sensors. So I don't bring it, right? I use the compass. And I think about this process with all the tools that I bring on an engagement, right? Now, I don't always need to have every single tool with me on an engagement. In fact, with our recon, I usually will strip down my kit to just the bare necessities, what I need. And then I might include one or two extra things that I know will be helpful in case I run into it, because it's a high probability that I'm going to run into that with this particular client because of their industry, right? But when I'm thinking about the base items in my kit, this is what I'm looking at. This is the process I go through when I look at all these tools. Hey, these are the pros, these are the cons. What is going to work with my workflow, right? The compass may not work with your workflow. This might be terrible. Maybe the search pole is your best option. Maybe this is your best option, right? Maybe there's something that you need to deal with, that you need the accuracy, sensitivity, and the ability to see this very easily. And that is, the meter is always going to win in those items, right? It's just bulky. You got to take it out. You got all these other things that I just don't like with it. That's why I use the compass. Also in low light, I can still use this compass because it's got this little, UV item right here, which you can't use the search pole on, but of course you can use the meter on. But yeah, so this is the process that I go through with each of my tools. I think, okay, here are the different variants of these tools. Why do I choose this variant over another? So whether it's, determining or finding sensors like I have for these tools, or even my bypass tools, right? Why do I pick one over the other? What material is it made out of? Does it fit what I need? All these things. Sorry, I was yawning while I was talking there. But think about that with your toolkit, right? Go through this process. If you have multiple versions of tools that can do the same thing, go through the process and see what actually is going to work best for your workflow. And tell me, what do you think about when you are trying to determine something that goes into your kit? What are your big concerns with that? Leave that in a comment below. Let me know. As always, I appreciate you watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. Share this video around. Share your thoughts about it around as well. And as always, stay safe, happy hacking, and keep it legal. Take care.